All right, man.
Hey Dinesh.
Hi, how are you?
Hi everyone. Welcome to yet another episode of the Industry Show. My host and guest today is Dinesh Chawla. Dinesh, thanks for joining us, and thanks to you and Praveen for hosting me in this beautiful city, this land of opportunity. I'm really excited to be here.
Okay. Well, we're happy to have you.
Yeah, thanks for making
It's
the
always
time.
good to have company. Yeah.
No, this is awesome. This is beautiful.
Okay.
And we've had quite an adventurous 24 hours
It's
yesterday.
been interesting, yeah.
Yeah.
If I had planned it, it wouldn't have been this good.
I don't trust you when you say
Yeah.
that.
It was all PG-13 though,
Of
right?
course,
Yeah, okay.
yes. So before we get started about your journey and your business, let's go back to where you were born and how did you end up in Mississippi of all places?
Okay. Well, I'm going to compress a half century plus into what, 1 or 2 minutes, or?
Yeah, about 90 seconds.
Okay.
Yeah, sure.
My birth is preceded, obviously, by my parents meeting.
Right.
My parents were both, that was not the Immaculate Conception. My parents were both born on what's now the Pakistan side
Right.
of the Pakistan-India border. At that time, was British India.
The
They
Indus
were
Valley, right? That's
exactly Indus.
the
right.
industry show. Hence.
Exactly,
Yeah.
very much. So in preparation for this
Yes.
interview, okay. So they were both forced with their families to migrate to what's present-day Punjab,
Right.
India, and they met in a refugee camp. Very humble beginning, and they just took a liking to each other and kept in touch for the better part of about 15 years there. My father had a little bit more of a struggle. My mother's relatives were a little bit in a better position. Preceding the partition, their migration, my father lost his father and his 2 older brothers.
Right.
They were murdered. He was about 9 years old and had to fend for the family as a provider. And he worked. He finally got out of the refugee camp. He was able to establish a home in Ludhiana, India. That's where I was born. And he became a professor at Punjab Agricultural University. He was the first kid in his family to get past the 5th grade.
Wow.
That wasn't enough accolade for him. He actually got a PhD, which he earned in Germany. And he was doing very well, but he had a taste of the West while he was in Germany in 1960. And he was just fascinated by it. And he cashed in all his chips, borrowed money from friends, bought a one-way ticket to Canada with no contacts and no job prospect in advance.
And this is back in the 60s.
1965.
No internet, obviously, no Google.
Nothing. Not that we knew of. And I was just a few months old, and he left us to create a nest for us over there. We were able to migrate to Canada in 1967 before my 2nd birthday, the day before. And he rose to a senior position as a research scientist with the government of Canada, water pollution, water quality. Along the way, in 1969, my brother Suresh was born in Canada, and we were doing very well. He had a very prestigious position, but he ran into an issue of discrimination over there. It was a different time in Canada, and Indians were, they struggled with perceptions of British-dominated society, and they had, I guess, there's still enough of them who remember colonial England or colonial India. And Dad had to try to overcome that. He filed a case. It didn't work out well. And so, like most people who want to escape discrimination, he moved to Mississippi. We arrived in Mississippi July 7th, 1977, or 77, yeah.
You should be in the casino business.
Yeah, or maybe we could have bought a lottery ticket that day.
Right.
But we started with a grocery store, and he expanded to a restaurant. And that was enough for about 10 or 12 years, but along the way he wanted to get into the hotel business. He had several people who were prominent in the hotel business and developing. He struggled to get his first one open, and I ended up joining him, not by choice, but out of necessity. And here we are, 29 years later.
29 years only, right?
Having developed in the hotel business, yeah.
That's quite a journey.
And
I know there's a lot more stories attached to that, and hopefully we'll capture some of them. If
maybe
not all
one day
of
I'll have a Wikipedia page. I don't have to talk as much.
Let's get started on that.
Sure. Okay.
Okay. So, obviously your involvement with hospitality came with your dad's work. How old were you when you started off?
I was just about to enter the last semester of the MBA program.
So no child labor. It was
no. Well, I mean, I started with Dad in business when I was 12.
Okay.
Actually, preceding that, I had a newspaper route when I was 11. Oh. I delivered newspapers for 1 cent per paper. It was the Burlington Post. I delivered 115 newspapers in roughly 3 hours. Suresh helped me occasionally, and I was paid $1.15 for that. And believe it or not, I deposited all my money in a savings account. Then for Dad, I worked at the grocery store. Mm-hmm. Suresh was 9, I was 12. We did little chores like bagging ice. I would watch in those days you didn't have the pre-programmed gas pump, so I would turn the switch off manually if somebody ran over their prepayment. We stocked the cooler. Eventually we got to the level of cashier. Mm-hmm. We started in the restaurant making mashed potatoes or stirring barbecue beans. Wow. And then we rose to the position of cutting chicken and serving it and cleaning the tables. Technically, I guess I became the assistant manager over there before I went off to high school. So my business was planted, and the involvement in business was planted at very preteen for both Suresh and me. Okay. And we just grew up learning some of the side parts of business, profit margins, the need for deposits, things like that.
So you kind of learned it on the ground.
Yeah, actually, people ask me, what's the most eventful thing in your MBA career that helped you in your development in business? I said, the reality is, as much as I appreciate the MBA and it did incredible things for me, those early days in the business with Dad, whether it was watching the gas pumps or cooking the chicken, taught me what it's like to be lean and have very little margin for error, and how important it is to execute in business. So I would put that on an equal footing with the MBA. There's nothing like that kind of experience.
True, I agree. So you got into hospitality once your dad was able to open the first property.
Well, actually, it wasn't hospitality. Dad had 2 contractors that went belly up on him. They declared bankruptcy.
During the construction of the hotel?
During the construction process. Right. And Dad was a very noble man. He paid all his debts. It wiped him out financially. But he didn't quite have the energy. He was an exhausted man, financially and physically, and probably psychologically and emotionally. So I knew a little bit about power tools, and I said, hey, I can handle this construction thing. I was in my mid-20s. So I helped with a couple of friends. We worked 16-hour days, 7 days a week, and I installed lighting fixtures, assembled furniture, loaded mattresses, did whatever I could.
And you had no training in any of this?
No formal training, but I mean, backbreaking labor is just, at that age, it's just kind of fun, And we did it, and we got the hotel open. I told my dad I would give him 3 months because I had a vacant summer. Right. During that process, I also handled a lot of things like purchasing the signage, executing credit card processing contracts. That was a derivative of what I'd been with the MBA. Right. So I did the physical and mental labor to supplement what he needed. Right. And then my 3 months was up. I was getting ready to go back to school, and 2 weeks after we opened, the manager packed up in the middle of the night and took off. And he wasn't in any shape to run the hotel. Right. Neither one of us had any management experience, so being younger, I thought I would be a bit more resilient, and I said, I'll take care of it, Dad, and I'll hold the fort. My brother wanted to go in the business, and I said, I'll hold the fort for a year.
Till he's ready.
Right, and that was 29 years ago.
And you were still in school at that point?
I was getting my MBA, and I was commuting 100 miles in each direction to take my classes.
Daily?
Daily. And working the overnight shift, and doing maintenance, and making the bank deposits. Now, you don't get a Nobel Prize for that. What it was just one of those blurs. I didn't have time to get tired, because there was also the stress of generating revenue. It was just, I guess, hyped up adrenaline. They didn't have those power drinks back then. We just, I did drink a lot of 25-cent cups of coffee.
It was survival instinct in a lot of ways, right?
It was fending off a really bad situation, and that's, you know, I mean, in comparison to being a refugee in India, having your father killed when you were 9 years old and your two older brothers, I mean, what I did pales in comparison to what he went through, and what a lot of people do on a daily basis. You know, people have disabled children, and they struggle, and the children end up being successful. You know, it just, or autistic, parents of autistic children. So I never really, anytime I feel sorry for myself, I see the hair is receding, or, you know, I wish I could, I was a little bit more energetic. You think about those kids on the St. Jude's commercials. They're 9 years old and they have leukemia. Say, shut up, you know. Stop feeling sorry for yourself. Go out and be purposeful. You know.
True. Yeah, that's deep.
It's just perspective. When you get older, you get a little bit of perspective.
True. So before you volunteered yourself into helping out with your dad's business, did you explore other career opportunities?
Oh yeah. I was going to be the biggest and the baddest in the financial sector. I was going to design I was going to knock Bill Gates off his perch. I was like, all those things.
And then you were also planning to be a doctor.
I went to medical school before I started the MBA program, and I did not like it. Let me just put it politely. I didn't fit in.
Not all Indians are doctors.
I think that was just one of those things that it was supposed to be the pinnacle of achievement to be a doctor. And it was my dad's dream, and you know, I thought it was my dream too until I got there. This is not for me. It's
good to know that before you commit yourself.
I don't consider it a failure. I consider it a one-year experience. That experience, had I not gone there, I would have always regretted what would it have been like. The second point of that is I learned to read large volumes of material, and for some reason doctors like to have everything in Latin, you know, the medial collateral ligament, whatever. I actually, it helps me when I read legal documents, technical manuals, and so forth. It stretched my brain.
You just have an ability to be consuming large amounts of data.
Very large. When Dad used to hand me specification books for construction documents, they would sometimes be in excess of 1,200 pages. Wow. And he said, "Can you have this done in 3 days?" And I said, "No." He said, "Yeah, you can." And, it was kind of like Star Trek reference, you know, Captain Kirk telling Scotty, you know, we need engines in 3 minutes, or we're, you know. And so I just did it. You know, that part of that crisis of lifestyle that we went through. Starting with his life and then my shallower version of it, it just makes you on edge and willing to work harder. And I'm not trying to get any applause for it. Family farmers do that over here. People who have a shoe store that are struggling. It just you work in that level, and you don't think about how much energy you put into it until years later, and you have the perspective. And then you appreciate how hard you were able to work, so it makes you more resilient the next time you face obstacles, or it makes you more grateful if you don't have to revisit that thing. You know.
That's true. So 29 years in, what is the scale of your operations? You know, Chawla Hotels is...
You're interviewing the wrong brother. My younger brother knows everything about the finances and numbers like the back of his hand. In fact, if you only had about 30 or 45 minutes to interview him, he would still be talking about the numbers. I know we have, I lose count. I know we have 18 hotels. I think it's going on 20, and I'm not sure that that's the right number, but it's about that. We have hundreds of employees. We do millions of dollars a year in revenue, well north of 20 million. And we're profitable and we're expanding, and I'm happy. But he runs, he crunches, he makes sure that if something is necessary down the line, maybe financial stress or whatever, he's on the ball.
So he's got the whip.
Well, I look at it like Walt Disney and Roy Disney, okay? I think Roy was his brother. So Walt Disney had the imagination and the passion, the drive, and could see things that other people couldn't see. So I give myself a little bit of credit. I'm not as talented as Walt Disney. I'm not self-aggrandizing there. But Roy Disney was the one who made everything work.
Right.
And that's his level of thing. And you know, for historical purposes, Roy Disney lived about 25 to 30 years longer than Walt Disney. So that's a good thing. Yeah. Or you could even use another parallel, because some people call me, they talk about me as Willy Wonka.
Yeah.
Willy Wonka needed Slugworth.
Picture is right behind that wall.
My son, my older son Samir, bought me a picture of Willy Wonka.
Yeah.
It's
beautiful
very
picture.
Well, I was very touched when he got it for me, but I just like that pure imagination song.
Right.
I listen to it all the time, sometimes in the shower, and it's inspiring. You know,
It is.
Let's do something different.
Yes.
Why do we have to walk between the lines all the time? You know.
Yeah, we talked about it, right? Going on the other end of the river,
Yes.
where no one has gone before.
Right.
So the market here is, you know, I kind of been here about a day now. It's you're catering to a very unique market, as far as I see. You know, this is not Los Angeles or Chicago or San Francisco. Hi, Praveen. So tell us a bit more about the economics of this market, who your customers are, and what are they looking for?
The good thing about this not being Los Angeles or Chicago is I can drive from my house to work in 3 minutes. If I catch traffic and the one stoplight that's there, it's 3.5 to 4 minutes.
Yes.
Okay. So if I forget my phone or something, I can just go back. There is a lot of mental stress attached to people's daily lives because of commuting by itself. And I think that trends into all the interactions they have on a daily basis with their customers, with their workers, and so forth. So we're a very peaceable place.
Yes.
People make fun of how small it is and how I've dropped off the world scope and everything. I said, hey, there's peace and tranquility here, and you guys take vacations and spend thousands of dollars to do what I do on a daily basis.
Yeah, the walk across the block.
Yeah,
I'm envious of that.
My sunset walk. Yeah, I have one block and I get panoramic sunsets.
Yes.
I can take my dogs to different places, and anybody who knows me from Facebook knows that when I'm not doing interviews about important partners in the hotel business,
which we'll talk about in a minute.
We will, yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure you wouldn't be here if it weren't for them. But most of my pictures are about sunsets and dogs, and it's kind of fun. Now, you talked about the uniqueness of the business. One thing is that because we are kind of isolated, it's hard for people who have meetings over here to just drive up. They might be based 2 or 3 or 4 hours, and if they have a 9 o'clock meeting, they're not going to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning and not be fresh. So that helps us. Also, when they come over here, they're probably going to stay overnight after the meeting. So that drives a little bit of our business. We do have a lot of drivers. So people are not, everybody thinks that the hotels, their model is Disney World. So it's all tourist driven. Well, tourists by itself is classified in different ways. A tourist is also somebody who's visiting an area on business. A tourist is somebody who is exploring the area. Not, they might be here for cultural exploration. They might be visiting to meet their in-laws for their first time. That kind of thing. So there's a lot of different things that drive people to visit over here. We do have a reasonably strong business climate. Agriculture is the main component of our state's business climate. We have some manufacturing. It's not as strong as it was 25 years ago. And then we just have a lot of people who are interested in our culture. And they want to know why this is the birthplace of music.
Yes.
And we took a tour of the Grammy Museum yesterday.
Beautiful.
Yeah, I think so.
Amazing reception.
Yeah.
Thanks to you, obviously.
Well, no, it was a very nice place. They're very cordial. They're welcoming visitors 365 days a year, I think, maybe one day off. But it's a nice place to explore, and they don't realize the depth and how many people came from here for different reasons. So it's really nice.
It is. It was. I mean, people know you by name, so we'll talk about that in a sec. So, what are some of the unique challenges? You mentioned there's been manufacturing has kind of gone down in the last 25 years. What are some of the unique challenges that you face in this market?
Well, I don't think manufacturing declining here is unique to us because it's all over the country. But the challenge for us is to, I think some of it is generational. in my business. I have to rely on a lot of young people
Right.
who are getting started, and they don't have the attention span or the focus that's really needed. You know, that dreaded iPhone,
Yes.
where all the good things, and I use it a lot myself. I'm guilty of that. It distracts kids from the focus
Right.
they need. And when we started in the hotel business, we used ledger books. When we took reservations, we wrote them down on little sheets of paper and put them in a recipe box. You know,
Yeah.
now it's a little bit more high tech
Yes.
than that. But one of the things is to get the kids to the same mental level that those people who had to do everything manually
Right.
were doing. And that is an ongoing challenge. It's not unique to my position it's just something I thought I would mention.
Sure.
Another thing is to explain to people who are being introduced to our workforce that yes, people are going to come here from Germany, from Australia, from Africa, South America, and they expect you to know a little bit more
Right.
about the place. And when they say, what's the best restaurant here, you shouldn't say, you know, I love eating at Sonic.
Right.
No, I like Sonic too. You know, I do like Sonic, but they're expecting a little bit more depth of knowledge
Right.
and presence. And some people, they like our casual atmosphere, and then some people are a little turned off by it. They
Right.
don't think it's professional enough. So there's a tender balance. How do you bridge that gap?
True.
That's what's there. So.
Okay. So in terms of your business, we talked about some interesting partners. Tell us a bit more on what exactly are you working on now? You have about
Okay.
three or four projects that you're working on.
I'm going to pull a rabbit out of the hat and tell you
Okay.
who my interesting partners are. The Retzer family. Okay, they are the largest franchisors of McDonald's in America.
Yes.
Okay, now that's not the one you were talking about, but that's the one I want to talk
Well,
about first. I'll
yes.
get to the other.
Sure.
For about 12 or 15 years now, when I have managers meetings, I say we want to be an organization like the Retzer family. That's the pinnacle of what's here in the Mississippi Delta. It's a fellow who is a decorated fighter pilot, very charming man in person, very humble, down-to-earth guy, and just he works hard. And he's able to establish this incredible financial structure and inspire other people. And lo and behold, I'm business partners with them. Suresh and I, we joined up with them on a joint venture in Greenville, Mississippi. It's going to be our beta test, and if it's successful, we want to sprout these things up all over the state. And I think it will be successful. Suresh is the main driver and engineer of it right now. And the Retzers behind the scenes bring us incredible resources and perspective. I mean, when we want to negotiate a bank loan, we do pretty well. When they
With
negotiate,
them,
oh wow, yeah, the bankers, they're excited to do business with them. So that's the kind of resources they bring. They have an incredible apparatus that precedes us in business by, a couple of decades as far as our hotel business.
And to put things in perspective, they have like 100 McDonald's?
Yeah, 100,
Yeah.
And they have other properties and investments. So I mean, they're really sharp people. Now, the one you probably were asking me about.
Sure, but I do want to validate what you said. So, obviously these guys know what they're doing and they're partnering with you. That tells me something, right?
It's very humbling and gratifying that they have the confidence in us, and they're very respectful people. We don't feel like we're junior partners, even though they're senior to us in experience.
Right.
And it's exciting. I love talking with people, and some of the things we were talking about off the cuff yesterday, just bouncing strategy off people. I'm kind of known as a solo artist. I walk on my own path, lone wolf. But the reality is, when I meet somebody and I can share ideas with them, they better have allocated 2 or 3 hours of free time, because I don't shut up. And maybe that's the problem.
No, that's a good thing. I know that.
It can be, but it can be a little bit overwhelming. One of the reasons I got on Facebook was I found out that I was the last person in North America who was still using email as a primary component of communication, and to wit, I would attach 14-page typed documents, and no, people want a text message, and some of the words are one letter, so I have to pull back. I get a little bit too excited and exuberant.
But there is a lot of value in those 14-page documents, right? I mean, at some point,
for some people, it's a turnoff to a lot of people.
Well, once you've exchanged those text messages, you want to see the meat of the matter. Right?
Yeah, but then, some people, they feel intimidated, like, how do I respond to that?
True.
I don't want to undercut myself with a small response. So then I end up getting no response, or it seems like indifference. Meeting with the Retzers and being able to bounce ideas off them, it's true synergy.
Right.
That's what you want, synergistic opportunities.
Right.
I like that.
So your next set of partners.
Oh, yeah, those guys, yeah. All right, just for clarification, I am partners with the Trump Hotel Group.
Right.
I keep saying I. Suresh and I are doing it jointly.
The family, right.
The family, right. We are partners on two sets of projects. One, we are converting some of our existing hotel portfolio to a new brand that they've developed in the economy segment.
The American Idea.
The American Idea, exactly.
Right.
AI. It's the other AI.
Yes,
you guys do
AI,
artificial intelligence. We're doing hotels, in that case, it's a lot more structured like a franchise model. We're kind of the beta test for the franchise development.
But the audience for them, the target market is the middle America, right? It's
middle America.
It's not the luxury brand that people know them for. This is their first initiative, and you're going to have the first couple of properties for them.
I don't know all the history of it. What I know is what you could probably find online, and what they told me in person was when the presidential campaign, you might have watched some of that when it happened. When that was going on, they had to visit a lot of small towns in America. And the brothers, Don Jr. and Eric, saw an opportunity to enter that market, and they realized how vast it could be.
Right.
So that's what they're hoping to plug into. And if you want small town America, you're partnering with good people here. Right. We are small town America. Yes. The other one is a little bit more, I don't know, it's a little bit more dramatic. I'm trying to think of a good word. I wish I had my instant thesaurus on. And that is called the Scion Hotel. Right. Now, their marquee brand, the 5-star luxury accommodations, they're still building abroad. Right. But domestically, their strategy seems to be to try to develop this 4-star brand. And they had read about our hotel development. My brother, Suresh, actually met candidate Trump at a reception in Mississippi, in Jackson, and candidate Trump said, so what are you guys working on now? And my brother told him, and I probably told his son. And from that, they contacted us months after he was sworn in and said, hey, we might have parallel interests here. We're developing this luxury brand. You guys are trying to develop a luxury hotel. Would you like to come to Trump Tower and discuss it? Yeah.
Maybe.
So we went, we left Mississippi, and we pitched the idea of what was called the Lyric Hotel and Spa, our original project, to them, and they liked it. And we've been on a interesting journey since then. It hasn't been without
ups and downs.
Yeah, we had to shut down the whole thing for almost 9 months to restructure it, because we wanted to meet a combination of their demands, better functionality, and I guess more economic layout given the increased demands we're having. The biggest change was our meeting facility went from 6,000 square feet to 21,000 square feet. Yeah, that's like a $3 million, $4 million balloon. So we have to, and it had to be designed essentially from scratch, because there was very little of the original component that was transferable. And there were a lot of functionality issues. So we've worked very deliberately with them. There's rumors that we're on financial edge, that we're shutting down the project, that it was just stopping completely, that kind of thing. I got tired of telling people, oh, prosperity is around the corner. I was losing my credibility. So I sort of shut down too, and the rumor became the message, because there was a void. But you toured the site with me.
It's beautiful. It's going to be a landmark. I can see it.
Well, we're just hopeful that it brings enough, to do what we wanted to.
It's an amazing location. I mean, it's right next to the Grammy Museum.
It's close, 45 seconds.
Yeah, yeah.
And the university is
And
just
the
as
university,
important. Yeah.
yes.
And the spread
Right.
allows. So we're ready for concrete pours.
Yeah.
If we could, let up a little bit on the rain a little bit, we'll be in full throttle, and we should be open probably about mid span of next year.
I'm just kind of, my head started spinning when you mentioned that facility that's going to house like 4,000 to 7,000 people for concerts.
Well, it's not going to be a facility. It's going to be an open air concert
Right.
thing. But the portion of it, that's some of the secret sauce we're working on. I'm going to New York twice in October, and I'll be presenting that along with a lot of other marketing and local initiatives that we've been working on. So we didn't shut down. The construction activity stopped, but we worked very, very hard.
I mean, there's a lot of other things that's
Very
going
much,
on, right?
yeah, and-
so, as we are talking about that, I know you don't see it that way, but you're obviously a celebrity here. I mean, you and Praveen, and when we were out for like a couple hours yesterday, and every 2 steps you have people that want to meet with you guys and rub shoulders with you. So,
Okay.
and you're not just a hotelier, right? You're doing a lot of other things. You're talking movies, addressing the United Nations. So tell us a bit more about all of the things that you're working on as an ambassador for this region.
Ambassador.
Well,
Okay, yeah.
it may not be a title per se,
you
but
get a red jacket for ambassador and a sash.
sure, let's get one.
Well, I humbly accept that I'm one of many ambassadors.
Sure.
There's a lot of people who do a lot of things for this area. Not all of it is on quite the scope I'm doing, but some of it's a lot more important than what I'm doing. As far as the celebrity status, you could not have met more of a wallflower than me. I mean, I would go to parties and people would forget I was there in 45 seconds. Hey, how's everybody doing? That kind of thing. And 45 seconds later, and I was fine with it. Even before the iPhone came out, I found ways to occupy myself. A couple of things happened. One, I was thrust upon the world scene at Trump Tower. There's a fellow over there, his name's Mitch Garrett, he's a development guy, and he said, you guys are not going to believe the amount of attention you're going to get. And I said, okay, we'll get some attention. And when I actually was in the maelstrom and watching that, and people were talking to me from the Associated Press, Bloomberg, Washington Post, New York Times. I mean, I know all these things. I used to be a news junkie. I was like, wow, these people want to talk to me. It's kind of exciting. So I realized that I could parlay that into maybe positive publicity for the hotel, and I could engage people, and it was kind of exciting. Preceding that event, though, was actually my father's passing. And, there's a lot of reflection. Still goes on. I still think about it a lot. We actually still talk a bit. And, he dedicated a very good portion of his life to helping people. Having been helped himself, he appreciated all the steps that went along the line. But he had, with modest means, he didn't have the New York Times talking to him, or HBO, people like that, or Al Jazeera. I'm name dropping now.
Well, you've had, 93 interviews?
Something like that, that sounds silly if I say I've lost count, but I probably do have a count somewhere. But with his modest means, he tried to, I got a very touching email or LinkedIn message from somebody that said he went out of his way to make sure these kids had equipment for a playground, and how much it meant to the kids there and so forth. So I realize his example is, even if with modest means you can do something, if you have a greater level of accessibility, or if you have accessibility towards outlets where you can demonstrate your passion for a certain subject or whatever, use it in a positive way. My wife is very involved in social type things. She's trying to help prisoners. She's teaching them things like meditation and anger management. She's always making sure that we donate things to the senior citizen home that's over here. She works with some nuns who help poor people over here. You know, that's a close to home example. My children actually help, whether it's tutoring or community service projects through their school. I was always the laggard at that level, and I realized I should use this platform that I have for more than just self-enrichment. So it's actually pretty exciting to be able to do that stuff.
And you do this with such humility, right?
Perspective.
Yes.
Again, people say, we admire what you're doing. I said, well, thank you. I appreciate the admiration that you're extending me. What about the teachers that stay after school who help the kid who's trying to go from being a D to a C student? They buy school supplies. They you know, they come in maybe on weekends or something and do special programs for them. What about the policemen who are there helping your kids get into school safely, so they're doing crosswalk duty? What about the people who go and they sell supplies at the hospital, the candy stripers, if you will? There's just amazing volunteers all over. I get a disproportionate amount of credit because of this prominent connection, but I'm hoping that whatever prominence I have or whatever positive outlets I'm able to use, it will spin off into getting these people who really want to do things like the Technology Center or Praveen's prison project, and it could really make a cultural difference here. So it's an exciting thing to be able to do that.
And I could see that in the people that we met. They really appreciate all of that work that you're doing. And
well, I appreciate the attention, but it's more important the attention is directed towards the goals and objectives of what we're trying to accomplish socially, and also the appreciation for those people. We have an all-volunteer fire department here. You know, I mean, it's amazing. You think about it, you get to say goodbye when you have a hard day of work or whatever. Their last words may be goodbye if they are thrust into a dangerous situation, and they put their lives at risk. You've got kids, and I keep in touch with them, ex-employees who are in the military. I mean, a sniper's bullet can shatter a family forever. Their lives are on the line. All I'm doing is donating a little bit of my time, which, since I'm getting TV cut out and I've stopped watching sports quite a bit, I really have a lot more time. So I'm channeling those spare minutes that I have into something that's really going to make a legacy.
And it keeps you fit, right? Out and about.
You know, the thing is, when you speak at these organizations, you eat a lot of mashed potatoes.
That's true.
That's
so it kind of balances out.
Maybe.
So have you used a coach or a mentor?
Best coach I ever had was Dad. Wasn't always the friendliest coach. No, Dad was teaching me things at the age of 12. You know, I gave one interview where I described how I had to make my bank deposits.
I remember that one.
It had to be flawless. I mean, it's a bank deposit. Okay, if you're off 15 cents, they give you a credit memo or something like that. Every time, even years later, I mean, I was in my mid-20s, and all the deposit tickets would go to Dad's office by fax machine because he hated computers. And you would get a bank error of $3.23 on the deposit slip, and it was either a credit or a debit, whatever. And he would just call me, you know, all the things I'm doing, I'm opening hotels. I said, son, I mean, why? I mean, you're using an adding machine. It's not even hard. All you have to do is check it twice, and you have the tape, you print it out, and, you know, over time, in the beginning, there was a little bit of pushback. I said, well, what are you so upset about? $3, I do so much work.
Big deal,
Yeah. And then it evolved to, you're right. It's too easy to, if it's something you can control and it can be perfect, you should. I also learned quite a bit about life from my mother. Anger management. I have people who worked for me for 20 years, and they've never seen me yell or raise my voice. And my mom, I guess because she's female, and from our culture, they weren't allowed to be really aggressive with men. And I saw that channeling of anger or whatever in a positive way. When she was upset with me, she would explain it in such a nice way. And boy, you talk about a great translation in the world of business. When you tell people in an angry voice that you're upset with them, it shakes them. It makes them want to look for another job. If you go instead into problem-solving mode right away, then by the time you've resolved the problem, they really appreciate your coaching, and you forget why you were angry in the first place because the problem's already solved. Or you don't necessarily forget it, you don't feel the same sense of anger. The first issue should be problem-solving. So I credit her for that. And then, I mean, I credit my wife for introducing me, more recently, reintroducing me to the social work. And just showing appreciation. You know, for the longest time, I just didn't have the ability to say thank you. To me, your work and your paycheck was the validation. I realized that you should appreciate people more, and I've become much more effusive in my praise since then.
That's awesome.
Thanks.
You have mentors all around.
All around, yeah.
So what marks the difference between times you have succeeded and times you have not?
More likely than not, if I had to distill it to a single word, I would say preparation. You know, this is a corollary of Dad being a mentor. My father didn't say goodbye to me when he went off the phone, because generally when he called me, he would talk about this, that, and the other thing, and we had a meeting scheduled every Saturday or Sunday morning at 9 o'clock, and I had to drive an hour to get there. But instead of saying goodbye, his last two words in every phone call was, be prepared. And it was somewhat ominous. It's the Boy Scouts motto. But Dad just was saying, you know, don't show up with a smile, show up with your work done. And I have found over time that you cannot over-prepare. You can over-rehearse, and it comes out a little wooden and stiff. But you can never over-prepare because the exercise you go through in preparing, it makes you more appreciative of the work or the objectives that you're trying to go after. The only exception to that would be if you stay up till 5 o'clock in the morning for a 9 o'clock preparation. I mean, 9 o'clock presentation.
You've done that.
Yeah, occasionally, and the results are mixed. You know, so you can overexert yourself. You don't need to do that. But if you know the material inside out, it will roll off your tongue.
Yeah, you just have to. You have to be confident that you know it.
Right. Budget. Part of preparation is good time management and budgeting your time. You know, too often, you think in your head it'll take me 20 minutes to do that. Well, if you allocate 20 minutes to do it, you might find a problem along the way. You should have a good buffer. So if I think something's going to take me 20 minutes, I'll allocate an hour and 20 minutes to accomplish it.
You're done sooner, great.
Right. It's sort of like the thing I tell people, you know, when I'm driving, if I have to be somewhere at 7 o'clock, I shoot for being there at 6. And along the way, if I capture a beautiful sunset, or I see something really nice, it might be the color of the crops or some wildflowers or whatever, I have time to stop and appreciate it. If I'm on a tightrope schedule, then I don't. So that's a corollary of being prepared is good time management and budgeting.
Yeah, and just the stress of getting there and cutting it short, it doesn't help you with the...
Some people say they work better with adrenaline. So, you know, they like to have that pressure on them. There's some benefits to it. Sometimes you do rise to the occasion. But how many times have you taken a test and wished you had read the chapter that had that one trick question in there on your test just for an extra 10 minutes? For an extra 10 minutes, if that made a difference of a letter grade from an A to a B, you can't capture that again. So being prepared meant you allocated a little bit more time, and when you took the test, it rolled off your fingertips there when you answered.
So talking about preparation and talking about others and how they contribute to their time and effort.
I'm going to write some of this down. I have
Sure.
a feeling it's going to be there. Go ahead.
How do you see startups and other entrepreneurs? Do you invest in them?
Financially, it's very limited right now.
Sure.
But I do invest quite a bit. You read the New York Times article. I sit at that chair and I meet people with dreams. They want to know, how do we get these dreams to reality? So I give them whatever perspective I can. Mentorship is kind of a comprehensive word. I don't know that I'm necessarily their mentor. Sometimes I might be referring them to somebody who's well versed in that industry. But what I like to do is give them that allocation. I mean, there's no formality. You saw me today. I had 3 people there this morning. So I'll meet you if you've got an idea for a restaurant, if you're a singer, if you're having trouble with your kids in school, and I can help, I'm going to do it.
You're a friend to them, and then you kind of see if that's a business opportunity or if that's just something.
Well, I don't even look at it as an opportunity for myself. If they want to go into something, I'll give them the reality of what they're facing.
Right.
And not all of them are asking me for investment. They're just asking me for guidance. Should I do this or should I not? So over the weekend, somebody wanted to buy a house. And I spent an hour and 20 minutes with them talking to them about the cost of insurance, repairs, what kind of buffer, how they could sell their existing car, downsize, and use that towards a down payment, what property taxes were involved and everything. And I wasn't doing anything in particular.
That has nothing to do with your business.
No, it doesn't. But this particular person works for me. And as an extension, she might be more purposeful in the business when she doesn't have this headache of the cloud over her. Now, it doesn't mean you have to work for me. There doesn't have to be any gain. I think it's just the right thing to do. Somebody needs you. That's the way society should work.
Just kind of pay it forward or pay it back, as they say.
I don't even think the word pay is involved. There's no sacrifice on your part. They're just
you're giving your time to it.
Yeah, but what was my time doing before? I was watching sports and CNN, and now I realize what a colossal wastage of time that was. This actually helps me grow. It gives me perspective on what everyday problems people are facing. And the more I listen to people, the more I understand the fabric of American society. I did closing interviews at the rate of maybe 8 or 10 per week for 25 years. So I have a good sociological perspective on the rise and fall of the American empire just from doing interviews. I could,
It's a learning experience.
Very much.
So in terms of your Indian ethnicity, right, how has that impacted you and your business decisions? I mean, we talked about frugality and just kind of learning things that you learned from your dad and in your environment.
Well, not all Indians are frugal. Not all Indians are going to win a spelling bee.
Sure.
We seem to do well in math classes, but not all of us. One of the things I think our segment of Indian society, my father having lived mother and father having lived in poverty, and a lot of my relatives having had modest means for so long, it taught us about thrift and savings and so forth. As far as my, you said hindered in business, I think? Or?
Well, not hindered per se, but how has that impacted you, right? When you make a decision, maybe in some cases it is a hindrance because we've been in some cases groomed to think a certain way, do a certain way.
I've got you. I've detached myself from old line thinking models a long time ago. India is still very much a male-dominated society. I hope I'm not being cavalier about this, but I think it's a little bit on the homophobic side. They just validated gay marriages. There's not a lot of diversity. Sometimes I see groups of Indian entrepreneurs, and they're all from the same province,
Right.
or they speak the same language. And race relations is a big issue for Indians. I mean, it's not just Indians with African Americans or Mexicans, it's even with white people.
Yes.
To me, that's all a lot of nonsense. The person sitting in front of me is my fellow human being.
Right.
And I don't want a medal for that. That's something, when we start awarding medals for that, we're in a sad state.
True.
It's just the right thing to do. And I found that from experience, because when I was struggling to unload carpet, or I had a bad situation, I didn't think the guy who was working with me for 7 or 8 hours without a break next to me was an African American.
Right. It
He
didn't
was
matter.
he was my friend, and he was helping me get through the thing.
Right.
The one thing I do have an issue that I would like to discuss is when we first got in the business, there was a stigma to being an Indian hotel owner.
Yeah.
And you can log on the AOA website, AAOHA. AHOA, yeah. And there's a lot of struggle there.
Right.
But the thing is, Indians have risen to a dominant position in the hotel and motel industry despite all those hindrances. So the way I look at it is, I still have repulsive things said to me about my ethnicity.
Right.
Not in the intensity and the public nature that they were before. People are a little bit more clandestine about it, or veiled, oh, we're here at an Indian hotel and everything. Does it bother me? No, not really, because I look at the perspective. For every one of those clowns that's out there, think about what position we're in now.
Right.
The financial success, and that's because the preponderance of American people are very kind, very understanding, very accommodating. So you could say I'm in the deep South and Mississippi has all this stuff said about them. It's warranted to keep the perspective of what happened in the 1960s in Mississippi and everything predating that with African Americans.
Yeah.
But we need to start using perspective. There's a lot of positive outreaches towards African Americans and what's going on. And the same thing could be said about Indians.
Right.
When we first came here, there was a suspicious glint in people's eyes when they were looking at us. But they overcame it, we overcame it, and it's not 100% buried, but it's so deep below the surface, I would be a fool to be bitter about it and not appreciate how many white, African American, Mexican guests and workers and friends that I've accumulated. So
it's just a community now.
it is. It's very homogenous. I do feel for the people. We use an expression, fresh off the boat.
Right.
So I do feel who do not understand the local customs and so forth. And you wish you could hug them and give them a 5-hour seminar on what to do and what not to do. But sometimes that little bit of struggle, it just makes you a little bit more observant and more appreciative when you get past the struggle.
Right.
So I think that's a good perspective. I attended that conference with you in San Jose, and I heard a lot of voices talking about discrimination that Indians face in the workplace.
Right.
I said, you cannot look with blinders in one direction, because if I'm not mistaken, the CEO of Microsoft, the outgoing CEO of Pepsi, they're Indians. Indian doctors are all over the place, to the pinnacle of CNN, Dr. Sanjay Gupta. And kids love us for the spelling bees, don't they? I mean, I was a troublemaker because I was killed the curve in math class.
Right.
But no, I mean, there's a lot of respect for the Indian community and what it's accomplished in a relatively short span. Really and truly, there's two sets of migratory patterns, but the biggest one is around the year 2000. And the way it's exploded. And Indians are at the cusp of being able to contribute at a mighty level. So we should be vigilant, we should speak out against discrimination, but we shouldn't make it a
the focus of the conversation.
Yeah, unless it's really violent.
Right.
Yes, it should be handled with respect for how many opportunities we have in this wonderful country. I mean, absolutely best country in the world.
Yes.
Very few countries accept immigrants and embrace them like Americans do.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, even in India, there's a little suspicion.
There is.
So we should not be hypocritical and not appreciate the American miracle that we get to participate in and we've excelled in. I mean, so many people who are of modest means or have modest ability to climb over there, they flourish over here.
True.
Because of the openness, the greatness of the entrepreneurial ability that they appreciate your creativity. They don't care who your family is, what caste you're from,
right.
What province you're from or anything. They say, man, you're smart. You work hard
You work
here.
hard, right.
Yeah,
That's
let us
all
help
that
you
matters,
flourish.
right.
Yeah. They're the best cheerleaders in the world and the best facilitators in the world and the most generous and they're the kindest sponsors of humanitarian initiatives in the world. We should appreciate that we get to be part of that fabric.
True. So on a closing note, I would say, what are kind of the
I'm going to write this down. So, go ahead.
No, this is for me to write down. What kind of advice do you have for other entrepreneurs, for people that are trying to decide if, I want to get into entrepreneurship, or maybe as a student, is this something that I want to do as a career choice? What kind of advice do you have for them?
Okay. Let me write down a couple of points here, because
Sure.
How much time do we have?
I would say a minute.
1 minute?
Yes.
No way. Okay. I have a saying. The surest path to failure is to only assume success.
Right.
It's an extension of the be prepared thing. You have a clear vision of where you want to be and what you want to do and how great your product or service is. The problem is you're so focused on that finish line, you forget the starting line and all the hurdles that come up in between. Do not be so in love with your idea, yourself. Do not say things like, it doesn't matter if things go wrong, we'll figure it out.
Right.
No. Actually anticipate at every level, like a flow chart.
Yep.
Every contingency, everything that could go wrong, and in reality, you'll do well. Like before we started, we decided where the water glasses would go, where the water pitcher would be, should I sit on this side and so forth. That portends towards success.
Right.
I wrote down another thought here. Sorry, I got off on the thing.
It's okay.
Why don't we, I think another point would be, how do you deal with adversity? And do you treat it as just something of shame or whatever? I look at it as an absolutely positive learning experience.
Right.
Every time I don't do something right, I chronicle it.
Right.
I look at it in detail. I make a study analysis and guide for other people. And I think that's very important. And I think the last thing that really is of value to people is have perspective. Realize that some people, they live in absolute agony every day. They're at the tail end of their life, or they're treating their parents have Alzheimer's. Their kids are disabled. Just so much stuff. Is your life so miserable?
Right.
You've got the kids that are standing in line in Africa. Or I think about my father being 9 years old and having that level of uncertainty.
So you just kind of have empathy for them?
It's not empathy.
Beyond that.
Don't have too much sympathy for yourself.
True.
Why are you worried about your struggle? Struggle makes you stronger.
Yes.
I'm not going to get into Darwinism or anything like that, but the more you're battle tested, your body is stronger if you are exposed to smallpox in the form of a vaccine in the very beginning.
Yes.
That exposure to it, your T cells are saying, hey, we don't want this anymore.
Right. Let's attack it.
So every miserable, horrible experience you have, build upon it. And don't feel sorry for yourself when you go through those things. But I really want to emphasize that first point, that you just can't look at yourself and think that you're infallible.
Right.
If you do, then I think the failures are going to be a lot harder. Every major business leader you will find if you read their life story, you will see how they channeled their failures into positive things. And the more and more you anticipate those problems, and listen to my dad's closing words, be prepared.
Yes.
Make yourself prepared, and you'll always rise to the challenge, I think.
That's awesome.
Okay, yeah. Those are his words, not mine.
Oh.
And the Boy Scouts. Yeah.
Well, you're relaying it and you're practicing it.
I
right?
am. He gave very good advice. He never charged me for it.
Well, Dinesh, thank you so
All
much.
right. Good talking
This was
to
my
you.
pleasure.
Yeah. All right.
And I'm going to walk up there and
All right.
turn off the
Thanks.
feed.
I'm going to have a
Thank
sip
you.
of water. Wow.